Hi all. I'm Nick Shiner. I am Nick Shiner, director. My name's Nick Shiner. I'm the director of peer-to-peer professional learning at Digital Promise and one of this year's festival's curators. Our upcoming session is a panel moderated by Makita Maids-Green, Senior Vice President of Digital and Cultural Consumer Insights at Nickelodeon. Makita will be speaking with Melanie Harkey, Corinne Day, Tiffany Leonis, and Phil Birchnell. The panel will share the secrets behind creating awesome apps and games that not only entertain but educate our youngest learners, highlighting the magic of collaboration and the incredible work that happens at organizations like PBS Kids, Fred Rogers Productions, Discovery Education, and Digital Promise. We can expect to gain insights into the process of developing and publishing digital content that makes a positive impact on young minds. Folks, I introduce you to our panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Wow. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, that's a little better. We are so happy to be here today. First of all, I want to say this is my first Games for Change festival, and I want to start by giving a shout out to Susanna Pollock and the entire Games for Change festival team because they are so committed to the mission and the movement, and without them, we would not be here. So please give them a round of applause. I also want to say that you are in for a real treat today. We have assembled some of the best and brightest minds in the industry to talk to you about Pixel Playtime. This is a group of individuals who are committed to creating change, breaking barriers, driving engagement, and building community. Unbeknownst to them, I refer to them in my head as the superhero squad of Play for Purpose. I'm really excited to dive in. I'm going to hand this over to them because they're going to do a brief intro of who they are and tell you a little bit about their line of work before we dive more specifically into questions. So we will begin with you, Tiffany.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm here at my first Games for Change festival, so I'm excited to be here with you all. I'm an early STEM researcher at Digital Promise, and it's a global nonprofit working to expand opportunities for every learner. And so we work with educators, researchers, technology leaders, and communities to design, investigate, and scale innovations for learners, especially those who have been historically and systematically excluded. And in my role specifically, I'm in the early learning space, and so that means I get to collaborate with our wonderful preschool educators and families to co-create hands-on and digital STEM learning experiences such as early science with Nico and Noor. Up here. And I'll pass it over to Melanie.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm very happy to be here. That's my slide. There we go. I'm Melanie Harkey. I'm the interactive producer at Fred Rogers Productions for Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood and Don Quixote. And we are a company, I'm sure some of you might have heard of Mr. Rogers. We are the production company for Mr. Rogers. We also make Daniel Tiger, Don Quixote, Almost Way, Odd Squad, and many others. And I focus on making interactive content for preschoolers. So that's where a lot of my work is at.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Phil Birchnell. I work for Discovery Education. I'm Senior Director of Immersive Learning, Immersive Content. And our role really is to transform content in this world of games-based education, finally getting some traction in the classroom, gamification being taken seriously, and this whole thing of immersive. What is immersive, and what does that mean when students and teachers, everyone, encounter something that makes you feel something? That's what immersion is all about. And so you're looking at Time Pod Adventures there, and that's something we've been lucky enough to do in partnership with Verizon, Innovative Learning, and so it's kind of a flagship really for what we mean by immersive content.
Hello, I'm Corinne Day. I work at PBS Kids, and I am the Director of Technology for our Game Squad. What that means is I had all the engineering efforts for our suite of games, which are HTML5, and that's called Spring Roll, is our ecosystem, and then our Games app. And right now we have 379 games on .org and 266 on the Games app. So it is a very large project, and we have a kind of small team. So
Lean and mean, that's what we love, Corinne, in this business. So clearly you are all cultural influencers. You are dedicated to driving social change. One of the things I think we should start at the core, we're talking about pixel playtime. At its core, how do you define impact, and by what factors do you measure success? And Corinne, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I have an engineering background, so I feel like you expect me to say like metrics and analytics, and like that's definitely how we measure impact somewhat. Like we definitely count our game plays, game downloads, things like that. But personally, for me, the impact really like is a mix of the analytics and meeting people. Like everywhere I go, whenever I tell people I work at PBS Kids, they're like, oh my gosh, I was a PBS kid. And like the fact that that happens every single day, and like at conferences like this, like constantly, that mixed with like seeing how many game downloads we have and how many kids are playing or like are learning analytics, like the combination is really where I find the impact and like see it.
Yeah, the mix of quant and qual, right, really gives you the full story.
Yeah.
What about you, Phil?
It was really interesting in a panel I was just on, just prior to this, assessment came up. Because that's the thing, you know, we're assessing it against Common Core, NGSS, things like that. And yeah, that's important. For us, very much more important, or as important, is we talk a lot about engagement. So content like this engages. But that's just the very, very first step. What we're looking for is two other things. We're looking for it to create a sense that the person encountering the content, the student, wants to invest themselves and go beyond engagement. And from investment, the real goal for us is to create affinity. So if you're looking at something and you're really, say you're looking at some historical content, you're properly immersed in it, it's entertaining you, you feel you're there, and then when that's finished, you think, I need to know everything about this. And it's not just about hitting a mark, it's not just about being assessed, it's about a love of learning and a love of what you've just encountered. That's really powerful. So affinity, that's the very top level for us. And if we can we can't always do that, but if we can do that, and it's just for a few students, and it's a scale all along the way, then I think we're doing something that's worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very important note that you made there, the acute connection between assessment, investment, and passion.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Mel, what about you?
I guess to answer your first question of like, how do I define impact?
Yes.
I think we often think about the change that happens on the player, but I also want to think about the change that happens with our development teams, with our partners, and with the community around the player. So that's one of the things that we think about. You know, obviously we're very focused on the child, just like Mr. Rogers was originally, but also the community and the family around the child. And the way we assess, certainly, like Corinne says, certainly metrics are one way. And ideally, if we had all the budget in the world, I would also say independent research assessment would be fantastic. But really, it comes down to the anecdotal experiences. You know, we do a lot of playtesting in the community, and we constantly get letters from parents saying things like, this game helped my child potty train. And you know, that's such an important developmental milestone for kids, and to hear parents call that out. And then we've done research with kids, coming back who grew up with our shows and hearing their voices, the strategy songs that stuck with them. Like that's also really impactful to us. And you know, that shows that we're making a good impact on the community.
That's right, making a difference.
Yeah.
Great, great. Tiffany?
I think what's so great about being on this panel is that we represent such varied roles and bring with us, different expertise. And as part of that, we all have different definitions of impact. And for me, something that comes to mind when I think of impact is, you might think of, something that happens at the end or final stage of the production phase. But I think that's true, and it's like a yes and kind of thing. Impact can also happen throughout the design phase. So when I think of that as impact, it's, if you're designing an app for multilingual learners, are you including educators that serve children from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds? Are you including families from those communities as part of the idea generation, brainstorming, testing, and refinement of the app?
Yeah. That's a very important note, and we're actually going to get back to that, but one of the things I want to underscore that you acknowledged here is the importance of not just thinking about the end goal, but the means to that end. What does that journey look like and the holistic effort to get there? I want to go back to something you said, Mel. Thinking about this panel overall, we know that gaming is big business. According to a 2024 report by the Entertainment Software Association, 190.6 million Americans between the ages of 5 and 90 years old play video games. So you all have a big responsibility and opportunity to reach millions of people, not to mention that some of you are reaching audiences that are even younger than the age of 5. Mel, you talked about some of the more positive aspects, the notes that you're getting from parents talking about helping their kids potty train. You talk about the impact of songs and the ability of music to teach. I wonder if each of you can speak about some of the barriers you faced in innovating for impact. And why don't we start with you?
Oh, yeah. So I think everyone who has a small child or has been around a small child has heard the phrase screen time as a major concern. And of course, it's something we talk about a lot, with our own children and with the children that we serve. I think it is really difficult to balance the time away from the screen and what's important, what are you getting out of the screen? And I guess one of the things that we try to do is try to educate people about the screen as a tool that you can use, and you can use it together with your child. And I think thinking about the quality of the content on there, much like when Mr. Rogers, went to Congress, right, and made the impassioned plea that, hey, kids are watching TV and TV is crap. Probably not the words he used. But, he said that, he saw people demeaning each other on television. And, I think we have a responsibility when we make these games to make sure that we're making quality content and also encouraging people to use the tools responsibly. That means maybe doing co-play with your child. And I think the games can help assist with that. So things like having natural stopping points in your games so that kids aren't encouraged to continue to play forever. And those are just some of the things, some of the challenges that we think about.
No, that's great. In the prior panel with Jesse Schell and his team, they did mention Mr. Rogers and his impassioned plea. So I think the idea of using technology as a tool for good is something that we all can get behind, but certainly there are various factors we need to consider when doing that. Tiffany, what about you? What barriers are you facing when innovating for impact?
I think for our team, when we engage in the design work, we're partnering with the preschool educators, the families, as well as curriculum and media game developers. And so when you bring, this group together, you all might be talking different languages at the beginning. And so it's important to, at the start of your project, allocate time for trust and relationship building so you all have a chance to get to know one another. And then together, you can co-create your shared vision of how you want your app development process to go. And so I think that can be a barrier, is when you have all these multiple perspectives, how do you balance all the different viewpoints?
Yeah, great, yeah. Balance is certainly key. And Corinne, with PBS, you are bringing forth a number of partners and IP. Mm-hmm. So are there particular barriers you face in doing that?
Not with the partners specifically, but with the audience, yes, in general. It's very difficult. Our target audience is 2 to 8. And the first barrier that I could think of with that is of safety concerns. We try to stay COPPA compliant. We don't collect any identifiable information. We don't have logins. Another thing that's a barrier is their literal age. Most of them can't read. So how do you build a game or an app where a child can navigate and they don't know how to read exit when they want to exit a game? So we do a lot of rapid iteration with our team, a lot of demoing and with our design team. And then another thing that is a barrier is, so we're free and nonprofit, so that means that most of our audience is in a lower socioeconomic level. So we have to make sure that our app and our games are going to run on devices that are not the newest iPhone or the newest Pixel, that are like hand-me-downs, and we have to make sure that games can be played offline, and that the kids that have the hand-me-down iPhone are going to get the same experience as the kids that have the brand new one. So those are the main 3 barriers that we struggle with on a daily basis.
Sure. Thank you for sharing. And Phil?
I think one of the barriers for us, I'm talking about schools now, really, is perception. It's getting past that perception that playing and games don't really belong all the time in a classroom. I've had internal meetings where people have said, oh, we were going to do something a bit more serious than this. And we have lots of phrases and lots of principles in our team. And one of them is pedagogy first, technology second. It's like, how do you get through that doorway? How do you make sure that pedagogy leads? And it's so important. And with the other thing we have is that immersion, which is we create immersive content, is an amplifier of things. So that's really powerful. What teacher doesn't want to amplify learning, the pace of the learning, and the depth of the learning? So we need to make those arguments. So for that, we need to be serious. I'm a serious educator, but I make games. Our team makes games. So it's so important that we bring that messaging with us. Play is such a powerful, positive thing across all ages. But we put it with pre-K, kindergarten. We don't say it's right across the board, including the teacher. You've got to have that as well. The other one is access and devices. Our head of development is here as well, and his sleepless nights over making sure that it runs on that Chromebook that otherwise is going to melt and turn into a blob of plastic if you actually do run the software. So it's things like that. Those are the things we're looking at. It's always making it a ramp so that if you can access some meaningful content, some meaningful play, and some meaningful outcomes, regardless of what you've got in front of you.
Yes, Phil, and this is why you're on the superhero squad of Play with Purpose. Yes. I want to double click into that for a minute, though, because having worked at Sesame Street, having worked at Nickelodeon, I know that a lot of factors for schools are certainly brand trust, but also this notion of there are sometimes moments where there's a perception that if there's a commercial IP associated with an educational game, it's somehow less educational. Can you speak to that?
Oh, yeah. This is a safe space, right?
Yes.
So, well,
we're among friends.
Yeah, okay. It's not being recorded, is it? No, okay. So Sesame Street is a great example. We work with Sesame Street. We work with Minecraft. We work with lots of brands. Bringing those brands into the classroom first of all, it's a huge responsibility. There's a huge weight. I'm from the UK, you might have noticed. I'm from the UK. I grew up with Sesame Street, with my teacher going, it's not Z, it's Z. It's not brought to you by the letter Z, it's brought to you by the letter Z. But it's a big deal. How do you leverage that into the classroom? How do you create experiences that can bring those values along with it? It's such a challenge. And it's a lot easier to not actually have that IP and do something that frees you up. But at the same time, it's about understanding what happens when children encounter the power of that trigger in front of them. And when they do, our responsibility is to find that one thing, that thing that I talk a lot about doorways and gateways. I think we're all about opening little gateways. So there's a truck behind me that's got 200,000 learning assets. But if I can use Oscar to open up a little doorway, then the truck can unload all that content through that gateway. And that's what it's about with it. So it's a real double-edged sword. But it takes probably, I think, twice, 3 times, 4 times as much planning and design to make that IP work for you.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. One of the through lines I hear in everything that you all have stated is this idea and importance of collaboration, right? Whether you're collaborating with children, collaborating with educational partners, collaborating with each other. Thinking about partnerships, and this is something that Susanna Pollock and I have talked about quite a bit, personally as well as professionally, we know that there is such power in partnerships. A study by McKinsey noted that when businesses collaborate to expand their consumer base, they increase their revenue. they increase their revenue, right? Their average revenue. So I want to dive into partnerships for a bit and get your perspective on particularly 3 pillars. How do you know when to partner? Who do you decide to partner with? And when do you know it is the right time to partner? And I see all of you nodding. Tiffany and Phil, why don't we start with you, given the work that you all have done?
Sure. I think I mentioned earlier too, a lot of our design work involves multiple stakeholder groups. So the media and game designers, curriculum developers, preschool educators, and families. And so, it's important when you engage in this design process to involve all of those people early and often throughout the process. And as part of that too, you have to, like I mentioned earlier, establish the relationship, build trust so that you have a safe space so everybody has an opportunity to have their voice heard. You include the families and educators and children for the particular groups that you're intending to create the app for. So are you able to create an app that reflects their cultural and linguistic backgrounds? And so I think that's an important part of the collaboration work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and with Verizon Innovative Learning, Digital Promise, the thing that, it was just a meeting of minds, I think. It was, the right understanding was there. Another thing I talk about a lot, which I think is a luxury for educators these days, is to have an understanding of a philosophy of education before you get to the mechanics of education. And I think we shared a philosophy of education and the promise and what it was all about and what we could do. And so therefore, couple that with innovation, an understanding of how learning happens, an understanding of the desire for it to be free, which is such a big deal and such a pleasure to work on something where you know that you're not going to hit a paywall at some point, it's all going to be there, and that you can experience that. Because in our sector, it's important to innovate, but it's important to innovate with all of the understanding that I think we found that shared understanding together. And that creates capacity in educators to seek out more of what it is we all do. It's such a big deal. And so for me, it was that shared philosophy that said, this is right, this is the right path to go on.
Right, shared philosophy, knowing when there is the right fit.
Yeah,
Yeah. And speaking of the right fit, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood and PBS Kids. Personally, I love the game Nature Walk. I played it and I ran into my daughter's room and I was like, let's go on a nature walk, right? I mean, I was so inspired by it. But I think both from a theoretical as well as from a practical perspective, you both can speak to what partnership looks like. And so I'd love to hear from you both.
Yeah. Okay. So actually earlier this year, we partnered together for a New Neighbors, New Games effort, where we put out RFPs for a new game for Alma's Way and for Daniel Tiger. And I think Melanie and I both talked, there was a webinar where we had a bunch of developers that potentially could develop a new game for us come and learn about how to build a game within our Spring Roll ecosystem. I gave a talk on how to do that, and that's really how we find new people to partner with. We kind of put RFP out there and see who comes to us, and make sure that they have all the information they need in order to, think of a game that works along well with our IPs. And it's very rewarding. So all of the games that we have, the 300 so games, have all been built by dev shops that are using the tools that my team builds. So we're not actually building the games. We're partnering with these dev shops, with Fred Rogers, with Sesame, to get all these games built. So there's a lot of collaboration. And the most important thing with that for me is making sure that it's accessible from end to end, making sure that the developers know how to use the tools, how from the beginning before they even submit a proposal to at the very end the kids know how to play with it too. So there's definitely a lot of collaboration from that very long end-to-end process. But yeah, so if you want to talk a little more about the New Neighbors.
Yeah, I'll definitely speak to New Neighbors, New Games. So our goal at Fred Rogers was to diversify who is making our games. So we don't actually develop the games in-house. We work with development partners. We work with educational advisors. We work with PBS. And we bring it all together as the producers. And we wanted to reach new developers, and we wanted to make this process better and easier for the developers to get in, because we think it's important to have all this public media, but if people don't know they can do it, and if the process is hard, then we won't hear those other voices in public media. And so we went out and we contacted groups that we hadn't reached out to before. We did post on LinkedIn, but we didn't just post on LinkedIn. We went to like IGDA subgroups and reached out to them. We talked to indie games business. We reached out to Global Game Jam. And we talked to a lot of people, and we're like, hey, we're doing this thing. It's an open RFP. Anyone, even individual developers can apply, right? So please apply, come to these webinars. And we had 191 people sign up for the webinars, and then 122, I think, people actually attend the webinars. And then we had 75 submissions for Alma's Way and 85 submissions, these are from companies, right, for Daniel Tiger. So that was a large number of people very interested and invested in it. And that allowed us to illuminate the process to those people, all those people who applied, but then also to look at what is new, what is innovative, what are people thinking about making for children, and then to pick from them 2 new developers, one for Alma's Way and one for Daniel Tiger, that we now are working on with them. So that was a really great experience. And we hope to hear more voices. I don't want to think of developers as competition. Like, we're all in this together. We're all making these things. We all want to make really good quality content for children. And so the more educated we can be and the easier we can make that process, the more great quality content can come
Absolutely.
about.
And congratulations to you for sourcing from so many diverse companies and people. I think that's absolutely remarkable. When you were talking before, Corinne, about partnering with various companies to bring their content to the PBS Kids platform, one of the questions that was top of mind for me is, and we're amongst friends, just a reminder. You don't have to say any names, but has there ever been a moment in which you've received something that isn't aligned with the impact you hope to achieve? And if so, how do you manage that?
I can't say that it happens frequently. Most of the time, by the point they've gotten to the coding, like all of the content has been kind of like hashed out. So like if somebody delivers a pull request to me and it's not aligned with our standards, we have a bunch of like automated checks that make sure that it's going in, and then we actually go through and read the code as well and make sure that it's aligning with like our standards that way and our content standards. So it doesn't necessarily happen too often with what I see, but I do have like a few checks to make sure, just in case.
Checks and balances, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I think aligning with technology as well as aligning with the needs of kids is perhaps more important than ever. Mel, thinking about mental health in particular, and the fact that it's such a part of the national discourse, we have done some research in Nickelodeon with kids 6 to 11 years old and found that they think it's more important to care for their physical health than their mental health. I know that you have been really passionate about making sure that kids are having their social and emotional growth fostered through games, both through mobile games as well as the web games that you are responsible for. What particular nuances do you look to leverage, given the capabilities of different platforms, as you seek to foster kids' social and emotional learning?
Yeah, so there's a few things. I mean, like you said, or my colleague said, access. So, I think it's so important that many kids, all kids, ideally, right, can access that social emotional learning content. We've worked with our educational advisors. We believe in the content. And so getting it out in front of them and having it be something they can use is really important to us. I've actually been spending a lot of the past year working on like sort of accessibility tools for that. So things like creating all our games in Spanish, or we have closed caption for our games. And I know I said that I make games for 3-year-olds, and 3-year-olds can't read, as been stated, but their families do, and older kids also play as well. And so it's very important for us to have those closed captions. We also have things like keyboard control, so that kids who potentially, I think iPads are very accessible to 3-year-olds, but if you don't, say, have great mobility with your hands, suddenly that tool that is accessible, that can reach a lot of people, is not accessible to you. And so we looked at that and we're like, okay, well, how can we make this more accessible to them? And so adding things like keyboard controls to your games allows things like adaptive controllers to work with them. And so, I think it's just really important that this content get out to as many children as possible.
Yeah, and I think that aligns with the work that you're doing, Tiffany, because you often speak and are lauded for the ways in which you're bringing forth diverse voices, voices of educators, of kids, families, game designers. When you are creating content or overseeing that area of content, does each voice have the same level of weight? Because I think when you're bringing forth diverse voices, given the number of content that you're creating, it also requires a level of discernment. So how do you decide where you prioritize feedback from each of the cohorts you're hearing from?
I appreciate the thoughtful question because it's so important, especially when you're incorporating all these different voices. And so, as part of our process, it has been to really understand that everyone brings with them their lived experiences, and each of these members have expertise in different areas. And so where are the opportunities where you can lean into that? So I can speak a little bit about the early science with Nico and Noor, which was co-designed with educators, families, and WGBH Educational Foundation. And it's a free resource that contains hands-on classroom and home STEM learning experiences, as well as digital apps. And that's to say that the apps are a complement to the playful hands-on learning that kids can experience at home and at school. And for instance, what we've been able to do when we created the Early Science with Nico and Noor apps to make it accessible for multilingual learners is, we had advisors and families of different dialects help and share their stories of cultural and linguistic diversity. For instance, when we were, going through prototypes of different games, one of the things that came up was, there's different words in Spanish for like lettuce. And so, where can you, again, bring in and leverage the funds of knowledge and expertise of the people that are all designing on this interdisciplinary team?
Yeah, great answer. And accessibility continues to be a through line in all of the work that you are doing. I'm looking at you, Corinne, because thinking about the number of games, you mentioned hundreds of games across the PBS Kids games platform that you are managing. How have the shifting priorities or standards with regard to accessibility impacted your production process?
Well, funny you asked that. In February, we launched an accessibility panel and an accessibility plugin to incorporate in all of our games, basically to create some sort of standardization. Because before it was kind of a free-for-all. It was like, oh, Cyberchase wants to do it this way, Daniel wants to do it this way. Now we have a set way, prescriptive way for you to code and deliver accessibility for children. And it's really changed the way our games have operated, basically. If you think about a kid who is 2 and they're getting on an app, they're learning how to navigate a settings panel. They're learning how to exit from a game.
Right.
And having inconsistencies, especially within the same app, can confuse them. So providing them with those standards, as well as the developers with the standards for accessibility, goes a very long way.
Thank you. And Phil, we cannot end this panel without going back to Time Pod Adventures. Real talk, if there was ever a reason for me to want to go back in time and become a kid, it would be to play Time Pod Adventures. You're able to go on a future mission to Mars where you can drill for water. You are able to go back in time and come face to face with a life-size dinosaur, which sounds both terrifying and intriguing. I'm wondering, in the time we have left, can you share what's the greatest lesson you've learned during this creative journey, and what has been the most rewarding part of that process in creating impact for the audience?
I think one of the greatest lessons it reinforced this lesson for me, was don't patronize users, don't patronize the young people that use content like this. Give them the AAA+ production values that they deserve. And if you do, they will eat your game. They will take it.
Yes.
They will involve themselves. And for us, it was the power of narrative. If you invite, and this was for teachers too, another gateway I'm talking about. If you open the gateway, the teacher wants to, one of the greatest comments we ever had was a teacher that said, "This makes me want to teach."
Wow.
And you know you've done something when they're like eager to go into the classroom, mess with all that tech, which messes. If you're teachers in the audience, you know what hassle that is. It's like, no, I'm prepared to go through that pain because I want to go to Mars in 2072 to visit Alpha Colony because apparently their water supplies have gone. What are we going to do? And you've got children that are wrestling with spreadsheets all through a life-scale augmented reality app, and they're trying to solve it. They're trying to save lives. They're trying to sort this out, and it's like, what do you? And another great comment we got: "I love days like this when we don't do any work." And you think, and the teacher's going, you know, like, have you seen her? She's got a spreadsheet open and she's doing this and everything. They're on an adventure. They're on an adventure, understanding that this is immersion. It's not goggles. It's not anything. It's not tech. It's adventure. It's being there. It's being part of it. And it's a vehicle. And it's understanding that. We love our job because we take people on adventures. And that's one of the great things we've been able to do with Verizon Innovative Learning and Digital Promise is to bring content like this for free. And now we're bringing it to Chromebook and everything else and broadening out. We're creating our TimePod connected universe, you know. There you go, Marvel. You heard it here first. the TCU is now a thing. Because it's powerful. And teachers that know it. I'm sorry, I might go on a bit here. But you mentioned before about, about well-being as well. It's like we give them space. We give you space to go and explore and to be. Because immersion is so powerful, it does that to you. And when you can do that, it can take you away for a brief moment. And in that brief moment, you can be somewhere else. And Hannah is an expert here in doing things with that and guiding teachers in a way that says, we're going to talk about STEM here, but did you know you could go and meditate there? Yes. Did you know you could go and be somewhere else? Because once that student has stepped through that doorway, another doorway, then you can do something else with it as well as just go and learn that to that standard.
Wow, well, thank you and your team for the many doorways and pathways that you're creating for children, educators, adults everywhere. Really appreciate that. We are in our rapid fire round, and so as we begin to tie things up, I have a couple of questions for all of you. One is, we've heard quite a bit about what you're doing right now. I challenge you to think future forward and answer the following question. What is one thing that is on your wish list, your product wish list for the future? And Tiffany, we'll start with you and just go on down.
I think just continuing to explore how we could leverage technology, especially emerging tech, in the early learning space, and understand what are the best features of that tech for young multilingual learners.
I guess go down the line. I will piggyback on you. I think we're definitely very interested in emerging tech and how can we use it ethically and responsibly because it's there. We know AI is a big topic. We know it's there, and so I think I'd love. My beautiful dream is there's an answer that is using that tech and that's ethical and safe for children. Because it's there.
Beautiful.
I would say that what we do as creators, educators, is taken seriously and is considered to be the norm. It's normal to go into a classroom, to play, to learn, to immerse. And that's just like, that's what we do.
For me, it was pretty easy to think about because we are diving into a redesign right now of our app, of .org and everything. So my dream is to have like an even better version of our app, which I am confident we can do. So.
Something tells me with your leadership it will definitely happen. The second question is, looking out at the audience and thinking about the power of this Games for Change community. We know that it's a community that is not only about action, but also about allyship. What is a word that describes what being a part of the Games for Change community has meant for you? And I won't put you on the spot, Tiffany, this time. Even though you're closest to me, why don't we start with you, Mel?
I would say partnership and growth. That's 2 words, but I think that this community is so giving, right? That everyone is really in it and invested to help one another and to grow the community. And so I think just being a part of it, hearing people, enables us to create better things, to go back and create new and better things.
Great. Corinne?
Motivational or motivating is my word. I'm like so motivated by all the people that I've met here this week and like will continue to meet. And I know that like we're all doing great things. And like that's just so cool to be in a room full of like creators that are making positive change, so motivational for sure.
Great. And Tiffany?
I think for me, especially since this is my first Games for Change, it has been about connection and just within the first half of this day, just meeting new individuals and getting to know one another and each other's work.
Great.
And for me, this is my first Games for Change, and it's been quite an experience. And so I think validation. You get to meet so many different people, and we're all testing what we do against each other, and we get we're all nodding at each other, and that sense of validation is really strong.
Wonderful. Wow. All great words. And we have a couple of minutes left. I don't know if there are any burning questions from the audience, but if so, please come to the microphone. Tell us who you are and what your question is. Hello.
My name is Hadija, and also known as Toby. I'm an occupational therapist. I love leveraging video games for skill development. I was just wondering, I love all the products and the apps and all the games I've heard so much about. And as someone who uses these games with like some of my clients, I love learning about what skills. Well, I have to use that in my clinical reasoning skills to know like what. Oh, it works now. Okay.
Come on, we could hear you.
I could hear you. Yeah.
We can hear.
We can hear you.
I love the concept of that you brought up about Mars and having the kids go and figure out that gives me executive functioning skills. That gives me cooperation, problem solving, and also even with like the various games that I saw that I played. Oh,
Thank you. That I've used with like my clients. There's a lot of visual perceptual skills that are being addressed. Do you guys list or have a database of these are the games that hit these X amount of skills or anything like that? Because I feel like there's a lot of therapists who I spend hours just searching for apps because kids today, every day, are being born and being introduced with more technology more than ever. So it behooves all of us to be thinking about tech and video games and apps in general as a way to build and bridge that gap with educational and learning. But do you guys have anything like that, like a database?
I can start off. We have a parent site that accompanies our kids.org and our games app, and everything has curriculum. There's curriculum behind every single game, every single show. So if you go to our parent site, you can see like, oh, I want to teach my kid about computational thinking, or like something else. There's a whole drop down, and you can go through there. We also have PBS Learning Media, which is focused more on adults, but that also helps you with like curriculum for older, like kids above the PBS kids age, and adults. So there's definitely resources that tell you exactly what you should be learning from our materials.
I think I was talking from a therapeutic perspective, like when we're doing all these first concepts, or when a kid comes to therapy and they're figuring out shapes or identification or visual discrimination and visual attention. Is there something like that? Because I know a lot of us occupational therapists and speech therapists and physical therapists, we love using these apps for those reasons. I was just wondering about
I think it's a really good question, because we think about all of those things when we're designing what we do, but we don't necessarily always contextualize it in a way that's useful to people like you and probably other people with different use cases. So I think it's on us to start thinking about that in different ways. You know, I could, you know, we could all probably point you to a website where you can get our stuff and it's free, and, you know, Verizon Innovative Learning, you go there and you can access it. But it's not going to be contextualized, I don't think, in the way that is immediately meaningful to you and would asking you to do far more interpretation than perhaps than you should do. So I think it's a good problem on us to start thinking about.
I would love to talk to you guys sometime after, but thank you so much for answering. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your question. I think it nicely bridges the importance of content, context, and connection. And speaking of connection, we are at time for our panel, but we do have a slide up that tells you how to contact any of us. I want to thank the panelists for your expertise, for your time, for your passion, for the purpose with which you drive your lives every single day. You're truly outstanding. Thank you. Thank you to the audience for being here. Please join me in giving our panelists a warm round of applause.
right, all right. My notes? Are not up. Nope. Great. All right. So for the first of our closing sessions for day one, we have the pleasure of hosting two remarkable individuals that are shaping the world of board games. We have Hasbro's Tanya Thompson, Senior Director of Inventor Relations, and she's going to have a conversation with Eric Lang, who is an award-winning inventor, designer, and also co-creator of Life in Reterra, as they share insights from their respective careers, examining shifts in consumer trends, and to explore how games can be used for social good. So please give us a warm welcome for Tanya and Eric. Come on. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Susanna.
All right, yeah, front and center. Hi, everyone. As Susanna said, my name is Tanya Thompson, and I'm super excited to be here on this stage of Games for Change. So, Eric, what do you want to say about our title, which is Designing Board Games for Maximum Impact?
Yeah, I love this title. Mostly because it's a little bit vague, but so we talked about it, and we decided that based on our shared past, we've both been working in board games for a long time. We wanted to talk, and of course we were going to talk a lot about this game, which was done with Hasbro. So we want to talk about what tool we have between the three of us, and that is maximum impact means maximum reach. How can we reach the most number of people with the greatest depth of play possible? Board games in the last 20 years have come a very, very long way. So we remember the classic games that we grew up on. And many of them remain classics to this day because they're great. But in those last 20 years, many games have come out that have gotten increasingly more complex, more deep, offering more strategy, more discoverability, more replayability. And in those 20 years, those games have become increasingly more complex. So we want to talk about sort of taking the journey with all that knowledge that we've accumulated, taking it a little bit, taking a step backward, and taking all that knowledge and making it more accessible for a wider market.
Yeah, and I'd like to actually speak a little bit about you, if I may.
Oh, no, okay.
Because you know a lot about this complex games that you
That's
are
true.
talking about. So Eric Lang has invented almost 600 board games and expansions, which is an incredible number. If you Google it, right? Yeah.
That seems high, by the way.
If you Google him, you'll see he is world-class, top of the industry, and so it's my absolute pleasure to be here. He's invented games like Blood Rage, Rising Sun, Marvel United. These are not simple games, so it was quite the departure when Eric showed me Life in Reterra. And we're so excited about this game that he co-designed with Ken Gruhl, and it's Hasbro's newest lifestyle strategy game. And I'm super excited because it's such a departure for you, so yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so, okay, I'm going to embarrass you now. Anybody who's working or has ever worked or knows board games at all can and should know Tanya. Tanya Thompson is I'm always going to get your title wrong. She's the Senior Director of Inventor Relations for Hasbro. Now, Inventor Relations is, if you're familiar with the music industry, like the A&R person for board games. Her job is to go out and scout for talent in all shapes and forms, to find the best board games, the best board game designers that are the best fit for Tanya. For Hasbro and Tanya. But it's a job that I've done this job for a few years. It is one of the hardest jobs you can possibly do. It requires a lot of judgment, a lot of hard work, a lot of boots on the ground, and like an incredible amount of dedication and persistence. And we've been friends for like 15 years. I think I've learned everything I know about how to work with publishers from Tanya and from that job. Furthermore, something that you may not see as much, but Tanya's worked incredibly hard behind the scenes on the Women Innovators of Play for Hasbro, which is an incredible initiative to open the doors for women creators of all stripes across all spectra. and bring them further into the forefront, because as we know, we have a pretty big gender disparity in board game design.
Yeah, thank you for that shout out. October 10th, if you're interested, is this year's Women Innovators of Play that Hasbro is putting on. So would love if you would join us for that virtual event.
Do it.
And let me talk a little bit about Hasbro, because I don't know if you all know about the company, but we are the largest board game publisher in the world. And you may have grown up with some of our classics. We do most of the classics that are on the market. So Monopoly, Jenga, Clue, Guess Who.
Hungry Hippo.
His favorite.
Unironically, one of my favorite games. The game's amazing. And there's a new edition coming out right now, by the way, which is the game that you remember as a kid, but even better.
Yeah. And you should definitely check it out. And the head of Hasbro Games is in the house today, so Brian Baker is leading the charge in all the things that we're talking about today. So it's awesome that you're here. And so let's talk about why. So we know that we feel designing board games for maximum impact is important. So why? Why are we doing this? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, sure. So here, this is the part where we're going to talk about, like, we're all professionals. Probably, I'm guessing a lot of us are in video games. A few of us are in board games. We work with a lot of really smart people doing a lot of really smart data-driven, metrics-driven design. And it's really easy as we get into the weeds of this to kind of talk ourselves almost out of some basic common sense. We want to bring that back to the forefront, right? Like, play is healing, it's connecting, it's practice for real life, and it's safe. Those four pillars for play are something that, and this is, I want to say this for face-to-face play, right? Social play, board games across the table with your friends, with your family. It's something it's so easy to forget until you actually sit down and play with a board game. Just get a show of hands, like, who's played a board game with friends or family face-to-face in the last month? Yes!
Yay!
My people!
My people,
all right.
Exactly.
All right. Okay, great, we're talking to our people. So that's really good. Those of you who haven't, please do. It's healing. Now, we have this unique opportunity, this unique white space in corporate speak as to create games that for both a young generation and a new generation of players that invites a rich depth of discovery and depth and discovery, like games like Minecraft, Roblox, Fortnite, that kids are playing nowadays, that are incredibly complex, incredibly deep games, but also really inviting, really easy to get into. We want to take an opportunity to have a game that is with Life Under Terra and other games that will be following in its footsteps, to hit a really broad demographic that's really inviting, really easy to get into, really easy to learn, really easy to play, but offer a huge amount of depth, everything we learned from hobby games, and bring that into a box this big.
Yeah, and I want to touch a little bit too on the why, in that, so Hasbro Games, our mission is to connect people through our shared love of games. And to take that one step further, last week I was involved, I was watching a presentation by some of the insights team at Hasbro on what is the loneliness epidemic. Mm-hmm. And it's so important. I have 3 children of my own. They're in their 20s now. And so I've watched them kind of go through the pandemic, the never feeling more connected with the outside world. Certainly they feel more connected than I did when I had to turn on the news to find out what was happening. They have it constantly in their face. But then also feeling very isolated and very lonely on their own. And I see the effect of anxiety, depression, that sort of thing. So when I listened to this presentation, which was all about the loneliness epidemic, it really hit home. And it was really kind of solidified the why of why we do this. So I'd actually like to talk a little bit about some of the things that I learned.
Yeah, you should. This is really, really insightful stuff.
Yeah, and I'm going to read a little bit as well because I'm citing some of the things from the study. So in May of last year, May of 2023, the US Surgeon General issued an advisory raising an alarm about the public health crisis of loneliness and isolation, calling it an epidemic. So 15 to 30% of the general population claim their loneliness is a chronic state. And almost half of Americans, 49% in 2021, reported having 3 or fewer close friends. Only about a quarter, which was 27%, reported the same in 1990. So what's going on? And it really makes me think about how raising my kids, how board games was actually a way that we were fighting this. Like, because we feel connected every time. If you've ever raised teenagers, it's not an easy thing. And so even when my kids were teens, we would do game night, we would gather around the table, and all the things we'd been arguing about in the week, like chores and homework and things, would melt away, and we would start laughing and really connecting together, which has set us up as a family as they grow into being adult, which they do not like adulting, but they have to do it. So it's all very important. In the loneliness epidemic, in the study, it said data across 148 studies, 148, with an average of 7.5 years of follow-up, suggests that social connection increases the odds of survival by 50%. Talk about that in reference to my kids. That gets me. The US Surgeon General advisory also said, frequently confiding in others is associated with up to 15% reduced odds of developing depression among people who are at high risk. So, and to me, the best thing about board games is it combats this epidemic that we're in the middle of. One of the best antidotes to isolation and feeling of loneliness, to me, is playing more, and especially face-to-face. Play is the power to heal, as you said, to connect, to instill confidence, and key life skills, like teach your kids how to lose by playing board games with them, and to rebuild connections, which is what we did at our game nights. So face-to-face play is habit forming. It's like an endorphin because you have so much fun. The social connection that play inspires leads to increased happiness, which for my kids, I just want them to be happy. So that's why board games are super important to me.
100%. I mean, I had a couple of anecdotes of my own, but I'm going to be mindful of time. This is one of the things I loved about hearing these insights, because as a freelance designer who's I've been on a mission forever, right? I'm just one freelancer trying to change the world through game design, right? And I always had the sense oh, what am I doing? I felt like maybe I'm thinking our line of work is more important than it is. Turns out it's not. I mean, we really are. We are delivering a sense of delivering a sense of accountability for each other. So what I mean by that is, anybody familiar with the phrase "the magic circle" when you're talking about games?
Yeah.
So when you are playing face-to-face games, right? You are in something called the magic circle. It's a safe space where you get to practice. You get to practice play. You get to practice skills, logic, deduction. You even get to practice deception. In some cases, even cathartic release, like violent release and stuff. But it's a magic circle. There's a tacit agreement between everybody who's playing. What is happening here? The stakes are low. We are accountable for each other's joy and each other's fun. That can only happen when you're face to face. As you can tell, the difference between the way you behave online and the way you behave in face to face with other players is night and day. So my iPad turned off. I apologize. Otherwise, you are going to hear my unfiltered ADD, and that's no good.
Well, and I would love for you to talk about what you say about a hierarchy of needs, right?
Right. Well, right. Thank you. I've been saying forever. I've been pitching forever online, on social media, that. In my opinion, play is when we talk about the hierarchy of needs, right? Food, shelter, comfort, love. Play needs to be right up there with shelter and love. Without play, we're survival animals, right? But play lets us practice all of this. in a way that is intrinsically joyful, intrinsically fun. Everybody who has ever had a baby, you can play with a baby without knowing any rules. They understand intrinsically what play is. We all do.
Yeah, and so that's the why we're up here, why we're good friends. We really relate to this. People at Hasbro internally that are an incredible team, they as well do this. This is why we do this day to day, and why, for me, it's my dream job. So what I'd love to get into, past the why, is how. We've got you here on the stage. You're an incredible designer. How do you design board games for maximum impact?
Sure. We got 7 minutes. All right, so I want to talk about this game, Life in Runeterra, because this one is like 10 years in the making, and we got some of our friends from Hasbro here. This game is slow rolling and release, and will be available broadly later this year. The idea here is we just wanted to define ourselves a mission, and this is, when I say we, it's my co-designer Ken Gruel and myself. The mission here was to take a game that is as simple and approachable. Like, you look at this cover, right? And it's cozy and inviting. It's like that movie poster of like building a community. I mean, it says that on the cover, but as you, just like a really, really good movie poster, as you get closer, zoom in, you see a lot more detail. You start more sense of wonder and exploration. What's going on here? Oh my God, what are they building? Is that a cell phone in the corner? Like there's so much, it zooms in like one of those cool Google Maps searches. That's what this game is. This game is taken from a lot of our video game backgrounds, like a game that you can learn how to play in like 5 minutes. I mean, really 5 minutes. Like, you can just open up the book, build a community by taking some tiles and putting them into a 4x4 grid. By the way, that's most of the game right there. But as you are playing, you are stumbling into this world of what we call like extensive combinatorics, combos, abilities, scoring, various types of interaction. And the first game you play is one of 10,000 different variants of play without changing any of the rules. So it has the depth of games like Magic the Gathering or Dominion, if you've heard of games like that, but in a game that you can explain using plain English, no jargon, nothing from the expert side of hobby, even though the game contains a lot of that in its DNA. So setting those goals, we decided rigorously over 2 years just to playtest this game, only with casual players, with non-gamers, playtest in the Hasbro Lab, the Hasbro Fun Lab, which I'd love for you to talk about for a sec.
Yeah, sure. So the Hasbro Fun Lab, run by Maria and Christina on Games inside Hasbro, is exactly that. It's a lab that we've set up, well, they set it up, where people from the community can come in, they sign up, and they test product before we release it. And it's an environment that's very cozy, feels like your living room, such that people feel comfortable, they start to play, and then we watch them. And we have different things that we're looking out for as we watch them play, how they interact with the game. Was there something confusing? Did they have fun? Things like that. There's always certain things that we're looking for, but we get kind of this unbiased observation as to how people are reacting and playing with the product.
That's right. And so key insights we were looking for, right? Ken and I used to joke between ourselves like this, that when you play this game, it's a 30-minute strategy game that's really easy to learn. But the game's 80% the fun that you're going to have right here at the table, and 20% a commercial for all the fun you're going to have 10,000 games later as you switch just a couple of building cards and completely change the character of the game and have to collectively learn all these new combos and new strategies. Like, for hobby gamers, for those of us who've been playing this for 20 years, that's not a huge amount of new, but that is new for most of the rest of the world. So our ongoing thesis here is a game that is this accidentally complex and varied and deep. We're offering something to, we're going on the supposition that everybody is potentially open to richness and depth of experience. I want to go back to, what are kids playing now? They're playing Minecraft, Roblox, Fortnite. I don't know if you've played those recently, but wow, those are deep, deep, deep games. Infinitely discoverable, infinitely replayable. We want to do that in board game form. But in board game form, when you're playing it on a tabletop, you get to share that at the table with your family, with your friends. You have an instant topic of discussion, instant topic of exploring together. It feels cooperative, even though the game is competitive. I could go on and on and on, but those were our goals. Long story short, took 2.5 years of play testing. It was a massive grind, and every single detail in this game is intentional.
Yeah, and I see about 2,000 pitches every year of people pitching ideas to me. And making something really simple, but with this depth of play is not easy. So kudos to you, and I'm so glad that we're bringing it to market.
Only took me 20 years.
Yeah. And this, also, we're super proud about this sustainability the thinking of that behind this game in particular.
Yeah, that's right.
So it is, all the paper and the wood, I'm just going to say, that's used in Life in Ruterra is FSC certified, supporting responsible forest management. Basically, the FSC, or the Forest Stewardship Council, is an NGO that promotes environmentally appropriate, socially beneficial, and economically viable management of the world's forests. So, and it was also important that the storage components were durable and long-lasting. So the amazing, beautiful components in here, that the trays, the storage trays, are actually made from 30% recycled plastic. So it's pretty amazing that not only, because I know you're a big proponent for things like that, but that the team actually took it one step further and put it in the game.
They did, actually. I mean, so a lot of us, I can say this, I'm not an employee of any major corporation, but I'm a very close partner of Hasbro. And like, we all have a sort of a sense, like, especially of creative types, of like what big corporate entities might look like. But like, I will say with full honesty, like, Hasbro Ken and I came in and said, like, hey, we want to make a game that's cozy and engenders feelings of sustainability. And Hasbro's like, all right, hold my beer. Like, and they made this, like, everything about this, from like full stack is all about sustainability. And even in the gameplay, when you play it, you feel like, yes, you're playing a competitive game, but you feel like you want to build a community in a sustainable way. And when you think about it from that lens, it's actually easier to learn how to play the game.
Yeah, so much thinking all around. So let's talk a little bit, because we're almost out of time, about what makes a mass market game.
Yeah,
itself.
so this is we're going to call this a mass market game, and so when a lot of us, when we think mass market games, we think games like Hungry Hippo, like a Topple, like Pie Face, and they are mass market games. But really, what mass market means is just everybody can play them. It's where you buy the games at I don't know if we can say it, but at big box retail stores that may or may not rhyme with market, right? These games, there are rules to making games for mass market. And most of them are around just being inviting, right? Being inviting and non-exclusionary. And like, there's nothing that says you can't make games that are really deep. Because this game is really, really deep. Tanya, you had we were talking earlier, like when you were talking about the person who buys mass market games, I love the way you described that.
Yeah, well, from studies we've done, we know that like 80% of purchases are actually done by moms in the family. And when I'm trying to explain it to inventors, I'm like, don't think of the person that's like I own 1,000 board games, but that goes into like a game shop and is very discerning. Think about mom going into a big box store. She's not there to buy a game. She's there to buy groceries, socks for her kids. And then suddenly she's like, oh my goodness, I've got this thing on the weekend. I want something to entertain my kids, or I've got this birthday present that I've got to get for my daughter's, the party my daughter's going to. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I'm going to run to the toy aisle. In the toy aisle, there's games. Oh, games are fun. Let me like rush down the game aisle. And meanwhile, she's got 4 kids in tow. She's looking at the shelf, and what we have to do is capture her attention in like 3 seconds or less, such that if we're lucky enough, she picks it up and turns it over to look at the back of the box to understand more about the game. And if she can instantly understand what that is, then she's more likely to put it in the cart. And that's really, really important. You've got to capture that person's attention.
That's right. I had like 6 bullet points here, but I'm going to focus on hook, right? Hook is what Tanya is describing. And the hook is the non-game design reason that you want to pick up a game like this. That could be a theme, could be an enticing cover, could be a compelling toy, could be a cool gimmick, could be what we call a mech, something that physical that you mess around with. Like, you don't sell a Ferrari to somebody by talking about the wiring of the stereo system, right? Because it's a freaking cool car. Like, it just looks amazing. So with all that in mind, and we got 40 seconds. So even though we have 2 seconds to grab their attention, we still want to invite them into a world of endless replayability and endless possibility. But just ideally, they get to stumble into that, right? We compel them with something really cool and keep them, stay for the fun, stay for the endless variety.
Yeah, the fun has to be a very big factor. The fun to work ratio, as we say. Make sure the fun is really high and the work they have to do to learn the game, to score the game, to figure out who wins, all of that stuff is low. The rules have to be intuitive, as Eric was saying, how he designed this game, such that you're gonna like fall into it and understand it as you go, and it's gonna you're gonna discover things as you play. So that is really, really important as well. So yes, why don't you wrap up?
Sorry, we have to wrap up a little sooner. Our practice was a lot faster than this, but we had a lot to talk about. Anyway, I just like to talk about imagine we are board game designers. We're tabletop game designers. The metaphor I like to use is a bad metaphor, but we have this really big, inviting game table, and we have these games that can change the way you think about games. Games like Dungeons and Dragons for me, but for most of the world, these games are they look like mortar. They got big spikes and volcanoes and infinite walls of rules on them. Our job as creatives is to keep all the depth in there, but just remove the barriers as much. Make this look as much like the Shire as possible, and then invite them into this epic trilogy that they can play forever. That's all I got, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, well, thank you, Eric. It's been a pleasure that we finally got to do something like this and talk to all of you, and I hope that you found that helpful. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Good evening, folks. I'm back. Hi, my name is Carlin. I'm the Senior Director of Operations and HR at Games for Change. I'm so excited. Our final speaker of the day is the fantastic Cameron Kostopoulos. Cameron is an award-winning multimedia director who combines intimacy with technology to create deeply transformative moments. They will explore how immersive tech can ignite conversations, foster empathy, and drive lasting change. But it's not all smooth sailing. Immersive media also raises serious ethical questions. They'll delve into XR's impact on empathy, inclusion, and change-making using the award-winning experience Body of Mine as our case study. Please welcome to the stage, Cameron.
From the moment we're born until the moment we die, we see the world through a single set of eyes, through 2 ears and through 10 fingers. And we perceive the world through lots of senses, much more than just 5, but it always comes back to one brain and one body. But what if we could actually experience the world through the body of someone else, even if it's just for a moment? Hi, my name is Cameron. I am an immersive creator, a creative technologist, a filmmaker, but most of all, a storyteller. I was raised in a Baptist family in the suburbs of Texas, where I was gay, so you can imagine how that went. So I hid in the closet knowing that the very real threat of conversion therapy or estrangement loomed over me. And it wasn't until a few years ago where that safety net fell away and I was forced out of the closet. Now, my outing led to me being estranged from my family. We still don't talk. And so it got me thinking, how can we use immersive technologies to build a safe space when a safe space in the real world can be hard to find? So that led to me creating Body of Mine, a full-body immersive experience that invites you to inhabit the body of another gender, where you can interact with your skin to discover stories of transgender and genderqueer individuals. Now, Body of Mine made quite a splash in the festival circuit. It won Best XR for Change at this festival, Games for Change, last year. It won the Producers Guild Innovation Award, a South by Southwest Special Jury Award, a BAFTA Student Award.
Like gender dysphoria
Beyond the festival circuit, it has made a real impact on people around the country and around the globe. It's helped cisgender audiences understand better what gender dysphoria is. It's helped genderqueer individuals connect with the stories of other trans people. And it's helped ignite conversations between trans youth and their parents on gender and identity.
What do you think?
This was from a screen in Oklahoma where we got lots of tears, and I was very inspired at the true profound impact and transformation that can come from these immersive experiences. The reception was mostly really positive. It was very overwhelming. There's lots of love, but also lots of hate. And I didn't have the mental strength to put together a slide of all the hate, but if you want to see what I'm talking about, go to my last Instagram post and look through the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments of homophobic and transphobic people. And it'll show you the true scale of the homophobia that we have to fight and the hate that can be in the world. Now, just a quick brief on how Body of Mine was created, because it'll set the ground for it later. Body of Mine was created using Unreal Engine, a free tool. This was my first immersive experience. We created a 3D environment that you got to step into, specifically this giant human chest cavity with cavernous ribs, a giant heart and lungs, that over the course of the experience transforms into this beautiful garden as the journey of growing into your skin takes place. The heart becomes a strawberry, the lungs become trees. And what we did is we designed these digital bodies and avatars of different genders, representing different scars and tattoos and colors and shapes and sizes. And throughout the experience, you get to embody them, and body after body. And on these bodies, we attached these intimate interviews we did with mostly just my friends, my friends who are trans, non-binary, genderqueer, intersex, so that you actually connect with these stories by touching different parts of your body. So you get a really tactile sensation. Touching your chest would play an interview about top surgery, and touching your stomach would play the story of a pregnant man. The way this worked is by using these body trackers from HTC Vive. We put body trackers on your arms, on your elbows, on your torso, and on your legs. We combined that with an eye tracking headset and Elite Motion, which track your fingers, so that when you put on the headset and all the trackers, all your body's movements, down to the blink of an eye and the wiggle of a finger, was translated onto the body of these digital humans. Now you could look down and you could see your skin, you could see these tattoos where you don't have them, you could see breasts where you don't have them, and you're standing in front of a mirror that's reflecting you. So you get this really profound sense of embodiment that really pushed the boundaries of what we can do in immersive technology. And so you can imagine the level of immersion you got was really profound. The problem was, if I wasn't there was no one to set it up. It was very hard to show people. And so when it came time to defining how do we use this piece to make change in the world and actually make an impact, obviously we had to start with, okay, we have to get this onto a more accessible format. Installations can offer a really deep sense of transformation, but if they're limited to just a limited number of screenings at festivals, then how far of an impact can it really make? So we broke down our impact goals into different categories. One being distribution. Let's get this very site-specific thing into more homes. The Quest was a great format. Millions of people own Quest headsets, across different demographics. Another area of impact that we wanted to reach was research. We wanted to understand the impact and the potential impact of a piece like this on mental health, on body satisfaction for both cisgender and transgender audiences. And then the third broad category was localization. How can we get this piece beyond just the United States and beyond just English so that it can represent the voices and the communities of diverse populations around the world? And so this is an ongoing impact campaign. Some of these are further along than others, but I'm super happy to share that as of 2 weeks ago, we have just launched Body of Mine on the official Quest store, where it's the first queer VR experience to debut on Meta's headset. And it's also one of the first to use this innovative new motion capture technology that uses AI-powered legs to allow you to have this full body transformative experience with just a headset. And if you view Body of Mine on a Quest Pro, you even get the face and the eye tracking back. So you can still get this really robust sense of embodiment just by putting on a headset. Beyond that, we also did an international research study with some collaborators in Germany, where who were psychologists, where we actually measured the impact Body of Mine was having on body satisfaction and on understanding of gender dysphoria. And so this study is undergoing the peer review process. It's soon to be published in the journal Media and Communications, but I wanted to share some preliminary findings because I find it quite interesting. So the way this worked is we used these instruments that have been well documented and researched to get people's measure of body image before and after the experience. And what we found, and this population was mostly people off the street. We did this in like a public screening in Frankfurt, Germany, mostly people who had not done VR before, and a lot of people who didn't know what cisgender was when we asked their gender. So it was a good sense of getting beyond just the festival circuit or beyond this community and seeing just kind of people coming off the street, what kind of impact is it having. And what we found is that people's sense of body acceptance actually went up coming out of Body of Mine, while rates of body dissatisfaction went down. People were feeling better about themselves. We also learned that not only were people better understanding what gender dysphoria is, but what I think is more important is that people could actually identify with the struggles of trans people. It's one thing to say at an intellectual level that I understand what gender dysphoria is, but when you can identify with the struggles of a group that you don't belong to, when you can actually get that somatic sense of understanding and seeing your struggles in those struggles and identifying with them, that's a much more deep and profound sense of empathy than just understanding at a cognitive level. And so this was really encouraging and really showed that this is making an impact. This is changing people's hearts. And just a few specific questions that I found interesting as a creator that I wasn't expecting is that Body of Mine was actually making people feel more attractive. I would not have guessed. People were feeling better about their weight. Weight is not really directly addressed in Body of Mine, but still people were coming out of this experience feeling better, feeling more confident in their weight, feeling more aligned with their body and understanding better what gender dysphoria is. So this is really encouraging, and once it's published, I encourage you all to go and read the thorough paper. And I'll come back to Body of Mine in just a second. I want to take a moment to offer a preview of a piece that is here at Games for Change at Onyx. This is a preview of my second project called I Will Defy You Until My Dying Breath. And this takes that idea of stepping into someone's body one step further. Instead of the visual representation of embodiment, this one uses wearable haptic devices, vests, sleeves, and gloves that allow you to feel the narrator's heartbeat, her breath, her pulse, as you go through the story of a transgender survivor of electroshock conversion therapy. So it's about as close to electrocuting people as you can do ethically. I had the pleasure of bringing this to New York, where we're offering previews. It's still not released, but we're offering previews over at Onyx. And I also had the pleasure of showing my grandma, who is Texan and Baptist, and who, coming out of experience, was, the video's not playing up here, but that's okay. What she's saying is that when coming out of the experience, is that she was trying to think of a word, but the only word she could think of was natural. And I was like, okay, Grandma, you got the message. Like, that's great. If Grandma can get it, everyone can get it. So if there's one thing I've learned now deep into my second immersive project, is that this stuff is hard. It's really hard, like really, really hard. Making this stuff is hard. There are high barriers to entry. It can be expensive. It can exclude people. It can be very technically challenging. The resources can be expensive. It's hard to make. And then even if you do make it, it's hard to show. Then you have whole other issues come up of how do you get this stuff into the world? Even if you can optimize it to get it on just a standalone headset, then there's additional barriers of storefronts that don't allow everyone to get on them. All sorts of issues. It's expensive to showcase around the world. It's very hard. It's not easy. And I don't have all the answers, but as someone who is new to this space, I just wanted to spend the rest of my time just offering some practical advice. Things that I've learned from my journey on the road the past year and a half, in the hopes that it helps someone here. And if at any point anyone has any questions or needs further clarification or anything, just jump in. I want this to be helpful for people. The biggest piece of advice I can offer to everyone in the room who wants to create something is stop waiting. Stop waiting for someone to give you a budget. Stop waiting for someone to say you can do it. Stop waiting for someone to greenlight your project. We live in the era of information. There are so many free courses online. There are so many free resources out there that you do not need to wait for anyone to give you permission. You can make it. And once you start to make your thing, people will notice. Once you start making that prototype, and once you start igniting that fire, other people recognize that. They see that fire, they see that, and they will help you. But it starts with you. You can't wait, you must do. The Body of Mine, it started as a bedroom project. I was a student at the time, I had no money, I had just lost my family. We had $0 and 0 cents. We scraped together this prototype, got into South by Southwest somehow, had to put together a GoFundMe just to get there. We're eating ramen noodles. It almost didn't work. That's a story for another day. And people saw that, and they resonated with that, and then they came to help us. So the biggest piece of advice I can offer is stop waiting and just make the thing. Start making the thing. My second piece of advice is once you start with a very clear vision and goals, impact goals. How do you want to use this piece to make an impact on the world? Having that very clear understanding will help not just you, because there are challenges along the way. It will get hard, you will get demotivated, but having that clear vision will help not just the people around you come to help you, but it'll help you. It'll help you have that inner commitment to, even when there's no more money, even when you're not getting paid to work on your passion project, even when everyone is saying like, oh, the prototype you made like doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, because it probably won't work, having a clear vision and that determination will help. And sitting down, and what we did for Body of Mine is we put together facts, Or there's an over 50% smaller risk of suicide amongst queer youth who feel supported. So how do we make more supportive home environments? Well, let's get it on Quest, where millions of households have Quests. So really breaking it down to that level helps. Engage the community. Immersive is a lot different than straight documentary because it brings up this idea of a simulation. Rather than a straight documentary where you are pointing a camera and representing someone and allowing someone to talk, when it comes to immersive, you are putting someone in essentially a simulation. And there's gonna be a whole other talk on the ethics of this, the risks of this, how to do this ethically and responsibly. But I believe the most important way you can do this and remain authentic when designing these immersive experiences is by engaging the community. Make sure that whatever story you're telling, the voices of the community are heard, are represented. Even if you belong to that community, get more voices to contribute. Through the iteration process, show these people, get their advice, get their insight, take their ideas, create them. And even beyond just like an individual level, there's also so many groups across so many different issues that have nothing to do with VR, that are out there making a difference. Some of the people we were talking to for Body of Mine include like the Human Rights Campaign, like the National Center for Trans Equality, GLSEN, these groups that had never done VR before, but were out there putting, lobbying in front of politicians, who are out there at LGBT centers, people who are on the ground doing impactful work, who VR can be another skill to their tool set. So by engaging that larger community, you can tap into those resources and mobilize beyond just the sphere that we're in. Tip number 4, if you are an indie creator like I am, is like AI is gonna be your best friend, like it genuinely will be. This is Unreal GPT. It is an Unreal Engine expert. When you get stuck, go to Unreal Engine 5 expert on ChatGPT and ask it a question. You will be shocked at the level of specificity it will give you. I'm having this specific issue, I don't know what to do. And then it'll give you an answer. And if it still doesn't make sense, say, okay, I'm a beginner to this. Explain it to me in more detail. Oh, explain that more. It will give you personalized tutorials. It will generate code for you. I've copy and pasted C++. I am not a programmer. I'm a filmmaker. So if I can learn how to do this, then anyone can. Like, this is a tool, an asset. You can use image generators, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion to create these things, concept art and assets for you. Like, this can really speed up your workflow and empower you as an individual artist. And tip number 5 is think beyond the festival circuit. This video is a video that we did at LA Pride. We did a activation where we went to LA Pride, brought VR headsets, and put all these people into the experience. Often, a lot of immersive work goes through, it goes through South by Southwest, it goes to Venice, it comes to Games for Change, and like we all get to see it, and we all say, oh, this stuff is so beautiful. But the people who should be seeing it aren't seeing it. The people who actually don't like trans people aren't seeing it. And so how do you get beyond that? We must think bigger than that. We must think beyond just showing ourselves our projects, which we should do. We should support each other, but we should also think much bigger than that. Are there events you can do with your local communities to get them to engage with this content? Can you make an adaptation of your thing that goes on mainstream headsets so that people beyond where you're at can experience it? When you do that, are there other materials you can package with it? Is there like a link tree you can make that has like resources to learn more, educational things, workshop materials so that you can support a supportive and constructive conversation? It's not just enough just to sit around and watch each other's stuff. We got to take it further into the world. Iterate, iterate, iterate. VR is not like film where you shoot something once and you edit it together and put it out there. VR is designed to be modular and procedural. You are going to build and delete and rebuild and delete and build and keep rebuilding your thing, and that is like the beauty of it. That is how you can make things really impactful, is by making something, showing someone, having a community event, doing like previews like we're doing here, inviting people to give their feedback and taking that feedback and iterate, iterate, iterate. And not being discouraged if you don't like how it looks like halfway through, because you can always rebuild it. You literally can. Like what all VR is a commitment to your vision that you set out for yourself, and then rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding. Your final thing might not look anything like your beginning thing, but that is like the magic of it. And then my last tip that I can give you is that the technology is cool. It can do really cool things, but people aren't impacted by technology. They're impacted by a story. And it's very easy to get caught up with the technology. And it's very easy to fall down these rabbit holes of using technology, of hitting roadblocks. But at the end of the day, beyond that, the technology is just a tool to help you tell your story. Make a commitment to the story, to that emotional realism of the piece, and allow the technology to support that. But don't get caught up on it. It doesn't need to be perfect. With Body of Mine, we had so many issues with the body tracking. So many issues, and that's just because that's how technology is. So rather than fighting it, we embraced it. We allowed those imperfections and the fact that you might stick your hand out and It might be, a few inches off from where your real hand is. We embraced that, and it became part of the experience, and it became this metaphor for dysphoria and not feeling one with your body. Where there are limitations, there are also opportunities. You can do really innovative things. So don't let the technology be a barrier. Focus on the story and be a storyteller. And that's the advice I have for you. Go download Body of Mine. It's now on Quest. If you have any questions, I'll be hanging out outside after. I'm happy to give any more advice. And I hope that I get to see so many more impactful, immersive experiences from this crowd. So thank you.
And we are going to get ready for our awards ceremony and our awards party. Before we go back. Okay, before we get the party started, I do want to recognize some of the people that have made today truly amazing. And of course, I want to start with all of you. Thank you again so much for giving us your time to be part of this festival event this year. I hope you enjoyed all of the thought-provoking talks on 3 of our stages, the hands-on workshops, and the topic tables. Who went to a topic table today? Yeah, we're going to do a survey. I hope you thought they were fun. It's a big experiment, and love to get your feedback on them. And I also want to give a round of applause to my team at Games for Change and the team at Preview. They just rocked it today. I know, every live event has its, hiccups, and we started late and all of that, but, they're dedicated, and they just want everyone to have a great experience, and I know their heart is in it. I also want to give a round of applause for Parsons, the New School, for having us. Thank you, thank you. What a theater, right? I mean, this place is amazing. And then I also want to thank all of our partners and sponsors who've supported this year's festival. We have major partners like the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association, Hasbro, Unity, Verizon, and Axala. We have supporting partners like Google, Play, Discord, government agencies like the New York City Cultural Affairs, New York State Council, and we also have Netflix Games with us this year. And many of our community partners and international delegations, really, and thank you for joining us. All right, so before we take our break, where we're going to give you a little snacks, some sustenance to get through the awards ceremony, which will be an hour long. It's a brief but powerful ceremony. We're going to all then go up to the second floor, where you'll be given drink tokens, and we have an open bar, and all the games will be available to play, and we'll have a festive couple of hours to celebrate all of the winners and all of the finalists. But tomorrow, we have an amazing day for you. We're starting with more keynotes from the UN, this time the UN Live, and then UNICEF tomorrow morning, followed by a full day of talks and panels on topics like mental health and well-being, the future of gaming and AI, and of course, many more opportunities to network. And don't forget, you'll have a chance to check out more of the G4C Awards. So much to learn and explore on day 2 of the festival. So for now, thank you for being here. Please join us. Okay, so I think in the event cafe, which is a floor up, right? It's on the main floor down. Somebody's pointing down, thank you. I think that was Elizabeth, thank you. That's for just some snacks and refreshments, no alcohol, we don't want anyone sleeping during the ceremony, but that'll be there for you after the ceremony, so I hope you stay for the evening with us. Thank you so much.